Good morning, Dublin. All right. Is that the best we can do? Good morning, Dublin. Good morning. That's a little bit better. I wanted to also correct Paul. Well, first, let me thank Paul and his staff for putting on this event. There's a lot of great presentations today, and I hope by the end of mine you'll think that's one of them. But I want to also correct Paul on one other thing that doesn't come with a warranty. Does somebody know what that is? Marriage. Last I checked, it didn't come with a warranty. So today, I usually try to bring something to the Cyber Threat Summits that's a little bit different. And today I want to talk about three things. And if you have a hard time remembering these things, think of Paul C. Dwyer. The first one, we've all used Sisyphus as some metaphor for what we do in terms of cybersecurity, continuously pushing a rock up the hill. So I want to give you a little bit of backstory on Sisyphus so that the next time you're at a cocktail party, you'll be able to say, hey, you used that term Sisyphus. Do you know where that came from? So that's the first P. The C is I'm going to tell you why being a CISO today has got to be the hardest job on the planet, and it's almost an impossible job. And why I think, and some people may get upset with me, but why I think just perimeter defense is a losing battle. It really is. And so I'm going to, the third, that's the C. And the D is I'm going to give you 10 do's to start doing something a little bit different than probably most of you are doing today. How many of you were here last year? You heard me speak about privacy by design. Well, since then, when I talk to people about privacy by design, I get the deer in the headlight look. They don't really understand what the heck that is. So I'm going to twist that a bit, and I'm going to give you 10 simple things in your organization for you to think about. So find my clicker here. And so our story starts in Corinth, Greece. There was this guy, Sisyphus, and many of you have used the metaphor, like I said. He was the founding king of Corinth. One day, there's this other god. There's a bunch of Greek Navy river gods, and one of them, Asopus, comes up to King Sisyphus and goes, hey man, have you seen my daughter? Now Sisyphus thought for a second, because he actually witnessed the god Zeus, in the form of an eagle, kidnap Aegina, who is Asopus' daughter. I bet you didn't know that about Sisyphus. So Sisyphus was a smart king, and if you looked at that slide a couple back, you saw how dry his kingdom was. So he cut a deal with Asopus and said, if you turn the river back onto my kingdom, I'll tell you where your daughter is. And he said, cool, man, let's do that. So he did. But when Asopus went and rescued his daughter, Zeus was pissed, really pissed, as you might imagine. So he sends this guy, Thanatos, who's the god of death, after Sisyphus. Now, there's a longer story in there, and I won't bore you with it, but Sisyphus actually tricked Thanatos twice and got away. And according to the ever-accurate Wikipedia, Sisyphus lived a long life with his wife. He escaped with his wife, lived a long life, until finally he got caught. And he was doomed to Hades, pushing a rock up the hill. And that's where that kind of metaphor came from. So how does this relate to cybersecurity, you might ask yourself? Well, don't you feel like Sisyphus some days? You know, you try your best to protect your enterprise from all the cyber threats out there, internal and external. And then one day, the boss calls you in the office and goes, uh-oh, we got a problem. And you feel like, oh, Jesus, I have another problem I have to deal with. So this is kind of a modern version of that with the progress report. But the idea is that as a CISO, you're constantly trying to stay on top of stuff. And every time you think you're on top of something, some new threat, some new issue comes out. You hope it gets better, but I'm here to tell you it probably won't. And this is why. Number one, look at the job of a CISO. How many CISOs are in the room? Few. The job of CISO, Information Security Officer, SSO, there's a number of names for anyone, even on the IT side, for those doing network defense. You're doing some of these CISO functions, but it's getting more and more complicated, more regulations, GDPR, the e-privacy things coming out. California in the US has just released a GDPR equivalent for privacy protections. And how do you stay on top of this? It's just getting more and more complicated. The World Economic Forum puts cyber attacks in the high likelihood, high consequence. So you know that, it's not going away anytime soon. These are just a few of the hacks that have happened in the last year. And look at the infrastructures that are being attacked. Health IT is probably the #1 under attack right now. But you heard about water systems and other SCADA systems being attacked. Some of it is just kind of penetration, adversary penetration testing to see if they can get in and do what they want to be able to do someday. They may not do it today. And then it's just the number of people on the internet. China, in 10 years, it's going to double, 1.1 billion Chinese on the internet. Some of the other countries are not as high, Germany's going from 72 to 74 million. Look at Nigeria. If you don't think you're getting enough letters from the prince in Nigeria today, 126 million, they're doubling the number of Nigerians on the internet. Now, I'm not saying all of them are bad, but the problem is going to get worse. And, of course, the solution set is getting more and more complicated. Which companies are the good ones? Which ones are the good ones today, but they're not so good tomorrow? It's just, I just don't know if I ever want to be a CISO because it's just so hard and it's getting more and more complicated. And then don't mention the IoT, right? Every service sector, every application, every location, every device, right? Your toaster is going to be able to tell your refrigerator when you've toasted the last 2 slices of bread. It's getting more and more complicated. 7 billion devices on the internet today, double that in 5 years, and double it again in 8 years, 18. Now, I know Paul said don't scare you, but I'm building this picture because I really do believe that perimeter defense is not enough. And I'll explain why in a few minutes. That's the last D. And then, who's right about the number of vulnerabilities? Who knows who has the exact number of vulnerabilities that we're facing? These are 2 popular databases. You probably recognize VulnDB and CVE. They're 8,000 apart. So which one's right? It's a tough problem. Of course, the adversaries are taking advantage of the TTPs that they've used for years, and then, of course, they're coming up with new ones every day. I heard recently that word macros are back. So I don't know how that happened, but they are. And the number of records being breached. This is a very interesting slide because you can see on the far right there, the top 2 lines are the malicious outsiders and accidental loss. But I found it very interesting. The 3rd line down is blue, which is the state-sponsored. And why is that going down? It's probably because they either got it already or they're getting it from another source. The cost of doing cybersecurity is going up. It's not going down. It's not becoming more efficient. It's costing more and more every year. So what do we do? This is the big question. What do we do differently? What I'm going to suggest, and for those of you that were last year, you might recognize this slide, but this is a typical organization network defense strategy. You set up honeypots and firewalls and 2FA and all these protections so they don't get inside your organization, right? Pretty much. But if they want in your organization, they're going to get in. This is a slide. They busted through the wall into the toilet to rob a store. So you have to understand that if they want to get in, they're going to get in. So my thesis today is you got to think more like a burglar. You got to think about the stuff inside your houses. How many of you have alarm systems on your houses? Can they still get in if they want to get in? How many times do you set the alarm when you leave the house or forget to set it when you leave the house? So my thesis is that you have to start treating your organizational data, you have to assume they're going to get in, and you have to start treating your organizational data like your jewels. My lovely fiance's in the audience. She's going to kill me for pointing her out. But she's got a nice little rock on her finger that I bought, and I want her to protect that. So I'm not going to leave it on the dresser in the hotel. I'm not going to leave it on the dresser at home. I'm going to lock it up. That's the same kind of idea that I have for data in your organizations. We need to start looking and dealing with this mess. And if you don't have a mess like this, you're one of the lucky ones. But most organizations don't even know what data they have. And they don't know where it is. They don't know who they gave it to. They can't get it back. And some of it's proprietary data that can affect the future's viability of the companies. Look on Look on SlideShare. How many of you have been on SlideShare? Or other slide types of programs like that? Have you ever downloaded a presentation and you're like, holy shit, they put this on SlideShare? Yeah, exactly. What are your workers doing? What other applications are they using and storing your data on? So my thesis is you got to take care of that mess because this is what they really want. Yes, there are a few adversaries that are breaking in to do you damage, to take down your utilities, or to disrupt your accounting or your order processing systems. But this is really what most of them want. They want this is your jewelry. These are your diamond rings and those pictures of your mom and dad when they came to wherever they went to. This is the information they want. So what do you got to do differently? Organize that mess. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to give you the last D, the 10 do's that I'm hoping to get you thinking a little bit differently. If I do nothing else, one of the agencies I've worked in the U.S., he was trying to combat crime against the Navy. And he said, Chuck, I've got all these bell ringers. I've got these agents, and when a crime happens, I send 100 of them to the crime. They investigate the crime. They find the bad guy, put him in jail, and we're good. I just want to take 5 of those guys and try to have them prevent the crime from even happening in the first place. So if you make a 5% shift in your thinking, I think you're doing really, really good. So number 1, document an inventory of the sensitive and PII data you hold. How many of you have an inventory of all the data in your organizations? 1? I see 1 hand, 2 hands, 3 hands, 4. 4 hands going up. By the way, I was going to hold up my cell phone because we are live streaming this, so I can't see the hands of the people that are watching this on the internet. But you need to document it. Document an inventory of all the data that you have and who has it. Also, revalidate where the data came from and why you're holding it. How much data are you holding that you don't really need anymore? And last year I used the example of a cell phone. You know, how much stuff is on your cell phone you don't really need anymore? Photos, documents, downloads. How many of you clear your downloads periodically from your phones? Document, revalidate why you're holding the data and where it came from. In Privacy by Design, they speak of data provenance, because if you have to keep track of where the data came from so that if you give it to someone else, you can tell them where it came from, because if they want it back or they want it expunged, they have to know, you have to be able to know who you gave it to. Number 3, if you don't know the data provenance, you can't revalidate the data, delete it. And again, I use the example of home computers or small businesses. I can't tell you how many times I've seen historical files back to 2007. Why are you keeping documents from 2007? Unless it's a very, very important document. And then you keep all the edited copies of whatever that policy or that proposal or whatever it was that you did. You've got every edited version. Even after 5 years that the contract's been over, they're still holding on to documents. If you have to hold it, and this is a tough one for some people, but get permission from the data owners on holding it and how you can use it. I call it the shift the burden strategy. If I come to you and I say, I want to hold on to this data you gave me, and I'm going to use it for ABC. Now, there are risks. I could get hacked, and it could end up out where you don't want it. Is that okay? And you make a decision, a business decision that says, I accept the risk. Because of the business I'm in, because of the nature of the transactions, whatever it is, research and development, I accept the risk. So now if I get hacked, you can't come back to me and say, you know what, I didn't want you to hold my data. You've got some kind of agreements in place so that I can hold the data and use it the way that you let me use it. Where possible, de-identify or anonymize the data. I can't tell you how many times I've gone to development shops and they have live copies of the production database. Why? I mean, maybe a small set of records if they really need it to be a replica of the production database. But you can de-identify, and in health IT, this is a big issue these days, de-identifying medical records. It's important to keep a lot of medical data because we want the research to go on, right? There are all kinds of research studies going on to help make people better and reduce the cost of healthcare. So you have to keep some of the data, but you can anonymize it, or you can give me a key. Chuck Georgo is some abstract letters and numbers. But de-identify the data or anonymize the data that you hold. I can't also emphasize this one enough. You don't need to keep the whole data record together. You don't even need to keep it in the same database. If you've got a long record, can't you break it up and put it in 2 separate databases with different authentication? But I tell you, the data architects don't always look at it from a security perspective. And when they design their databases, they want it all to be easy to develop and easy to program. I'll get to a story here in a second that will show why that's so important. And number 7 is, of course, encrypt it. You've heard this a million times. Encrypt all the data in motion and at rest. And why do I bring up 6 and 7 specifically? Because if you're familiar with the Equifax hack, that hack happened because the database wasn't segmented. Once they got in, they were able to walk around to all the other databases, and they stored the usernames and passwords in the clear. So you have to ask yourself, should this stuff really be happening in this day and age? Haven't there been enough Chucks on a stage like this telling people to do these kinds of things? We just got to stick to it, or get to it, actually. Number 8, establish retention policies. In the government in the U.S., we have these things for some information, and we have to expunge it unless there's an ongoing investigation or something that causes us to keep it. You can adopt that same mindset and say, you know what, we only need to hold on to these customer records. Order histories. I can go back my Amazon order history forever. Do I need to? I don't know, maybe 5 years is enough, and tell Amazon to kill the data after that. And in your businesses and whatever operations you're involved in, you can probably think through some of those same things. Why are you keeping all the data all the time? Use different authentication methods. That goes back to the Equifax thing. They got in through the presentation layer, and once they were in through the presentation layer, they had access to the data layer. I thought that stuff was kind of gone, but it's not. And finally, as soon as you no longer need the data, get rid of it. And get rid of it from everywhere. Go around the organization and look for it, especially in the development shop. I guarantee you're going to find stuff in the development shops and third parties that are developing software for you. Check them as well, because I guarantee you they've got stuff that you don't even know they have. And as a bonus, I suggest going through these steps quarterly, semi-annually, to verify compliance with the business units, to include the developers, and I emphasize that, and third parties, and also check with your staff about where they're sharing files on Google Docs and Dropbox and OneDrive and all the other places that they can share. Some of your staff are sharing files on Viber and Skype and WhatsApp. Do you know what they're sharing? Do you have a policy against them sharing it? So go through and just have them think through this. So my thesis is, assume they're going to get in if they're not already there. So you got to take care and better protect the data that's in the organization. And by implementing privacy by design practices and the 10 steps that I laid out, when I do get into your organization or anybody else walks into your network, this is what they're going to see. Nothing. It'll either be encrypted or it won't be there, and they can't take it. And if they take it, it'll be encrypted, and they won't be able to do anything with it. That's the simple thesis here, is start to clean up the inside of your house. If you want a copy of the slides, I have a copy of the slides with actually some words on them, so you'll know what I said a week from now. And just email me. And I thank you very much.